Is Chance the Rapper's advice for up-and-coming artists good advice? That's the question today. My name is Sean, Longevity, with the New Old Heads podcast and Bringing Down the Band. And this is my Unpack series where I go deeper in depth on segments of the New Old Heads podcast, which I'm a part of.
Chance was on Chance the Rapper. We talked about his album a couple shows ago. I don't know. We've been in the list gate for so long, I forgot. But
this was back when we were doing our greatest of all time list. And we documented the entire list and how we put it together online. It's like, just go to newoldheads.com/goat if you're interested in it. That could probably be updated, but yeah.
Chance was on the Breakfast Club, and I think it was Envy. He asked him about suggestions or advice that he would give to, artists that are up and coming, or, just people that are trying to make it. And I was a little confused by this just because we've had experience with artists and, we've been artists at some point in terms of the process of coming up. And some of the stuff that he said, I'm like, I'll just read what he said. He said, don't sign a record label deal, a distribution deal, a publishing deal, a management deal. He said, hire the people that you want to work with you, pick your goals, and just go get them done. You'll connect with your fan base and make money. So basically, he's, pitching just to control your own destiny, which is cool. I get it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice on the surface. Let's see where we're going with that.
To me, there's a part that's missing there. Like when it comes to funding, Lone, I'm going to come to you first. Do you follow me on that one? When there may be something that's missing with that message, because everybody doesn't have, the startup money to even try to hire somebody unless you're going to hire somebody for free. You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't know.
But that's what he's kind of saying, though, I think. I actually kind of agree with him.
Okay.
I think what the message that he's trying to say is don't get stuck down the rabbit hole that is what a label can offer. They can offer you a shitty deal where they continually make money on the back end and where you can end up never really making money because you have to pay everything back. 360 deal, essentially just a loan, right? I think the one caveat, I'm not sure where I'm going to go with this, but the one thing that I would say is that modern day labels really don't have much to offer except for being able to blow somebody from here to here. But they already take people that are successful at this point. So unless you want to be like uber rich successful, if you just want to be a normal, talented, successful artist, I don't really think the label really matters too much. The only one part of that that I think there's different levels to get to each one of those things. We talk about level or label and publishing and management and all these other things. Number one, you should never hire management until you need management.
I agree.
Only hire management until you really feel like you can't do all the work yourself, And then hold on, let me say. Otherwise, you are just wasting money, in my opinion. So as an up-and-coming artist, you have to be more stringent on how you spend your money because you don't have that flexible income unless you are maybe Chance. Another piece on that too is like when you're forced to do everything yourself, you're also forcing yourself in happenstance to also learn everything. And that's important. You as an artist don't want to just rely on one person to do everything. Don't get me wrong. If you got a homie that is kind of generally managing you, cool. But make sure you're also learning all this stuff at the same time as he does. Or if you have a manager that is more learned and more experienced, just make sure you're in there and you understand what's happening. Like that, I feel like that's a very integral part. I don't know what type of money he had coming,
I think
knowing his family history,
I think Chance had a starter kit that we'll just say that was left out of the equation in terms of that story.
Yeah.
But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I do think the team aspect is really, really important, and having people that'll really ride for you, and like the old idea of what a street team was, maybe. Yeah. I think that's important. Having people that will really, really rock with you, really spread your message. That's really important. And putting out a product that people really want to get behind. It's like you have to be personable. You have to do these things, but you have to be consistent. I think to your point, maybe it's a little misleading. To me, it's a little misleading only because, and again, this is just from what he said right there. I don't know what else he said. Yeah. But to me, there are a lot of other elements that might be a little bit more important than focusing on a label or focusing on these things. So maybe that's his point, I guess. So I don't know, I'm rambling, but
I'll follow you.
I kind of agree with what he's saying for the most part.
I guess the operative word is just when I hear hire, it's like, okay, let me pay somebody to, so to your point, maybe it could have been just, work for hire for the homies. You never know. Right?
Yeah. I mean, but even management deals the management gets paid based upon what you make.
Percentages.
Right?
Yeah.
So, But you don't need that if you can book your own shows. Like until you're legitimately at the point to where you feel like you're being pulled.
Yeah.
Figure that shit out.
I can dig it. JD, if you got anything on that?
It's almost easier said than done too. In the time that he came up in a big Chicago renaissance, so to speak. There was a lot of artists that were getting a lot of buzz.
So I think another caveat with this is we're talking about Chance the Rapper. And Chance the Rapper at the time was, I think Terry's about to talk about this, is like Chance the Rapper came up in the time. He got big off of a mixtape. And there was a lot of Chicago music that was coming out at that time. I don't think he signed a deal.
On blogs and whatnot. And this was when the blog game was real big.
Yep.
So his first 2 albums, one of them I think he was, a senior in high school. The 10-day when he got suspended. He made an album when he got suspended from school. Put that mug out.
Well, a mixtape, I guess.
Mixtape, yeah. Because that was the age of everything's a mixtape.
Yep.
So he put that out, did very well. I mean, this is the point and click era. You can just log on. It's out on your favorite download site. Did very well. He followed it up with Acid Rap.
Yeah.
That did very well as well.
That was the one.
Yeah, that's my favorite
and
Chance
like I
record.
said, it's easier said than done, especially considering his circumstances too. Everybody can't just make it off just that alone. Some people need somebody to push them.
Yeah.
Everybody doesn't have that strong worth ethic that's going to make them go that hard, even for themselves.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So I don't necessarily think that's the end all be all of it, but he did drop some jewels as far as how to get your music out there so that it's able to be uploaded to like iTunes and all the streaming platforms, Google Play Music, Spotify. He also mentioned something else that would
I actually don't. I don't know really what we're referring to here. So this is one of those things where, like, as I look back on our show, Jay Moore made a comment about how like a lot of our earlier episodes were very NPR-esque, and I get that feeling because the energy is very like. It's very much in a very specific way. And I feel like in general, we're not a super loud and, like we're not that in any way, but our energy now is a lot different than what it was, I guess, even back then. So, but yeah, I'm not really sure exactly what interview we're referencing about this, but I do know that we are talking about Chance the Rapper's comments about how artists don't need labels and that you can kind of do it from an independent standpoint.
actually make your songs eligible for radio play as well. So him dropping those jewels
there you go.
was key. But as far as saying that you don't need anybody else to help you,
Was he saying it from an angle of he doesn't want anybody to help him, or more just industry people?
he was saying that he doesn't want, at this point in his career, it doesn't make any sense for him to sign any kind of deal of any kind, regardless of how much money somebody can offer him. Which is true in his case.
Yeah, that's true in his case.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
That's not the truth in everybody else's case.
I think you have a good point, though. His circumstances when he came up were very particular because number one, he wasn't even the biggest name out of his camp.
He wasn't.
He was like Save Money was his camp, and Vic Mensa was the one that was bubbling. Vic Mensa was the one that was doing everything. Chance just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
These days.
Yes, which was an amazing group. But if you think about how they did it, though, I mean, they were a crew. They were a crew of the homies. They had videographers a part of them.
Huge collective.
They were creatives in general. At least I think they had videographers a part of it. Maybe they didn't. But
it was a bunch of them, though.
But even if you think of similar, let's take what Save Money probably was and kind of transfer it to what it is now. Like, are you guys familiar with Brockhampton?
Heard the name, but I'm not going to say I'm not familiar.
So Brockhampton is like a big collective of artists out in, I think, L.A. And it's just a bunch of creatives. And they do their own videos. They do their own this. They do everything themselves. Just a bunch of kids. And they're huge. And they make Kevin Abstract is the main artist, or the main known artist from that crew. But I don't think they're a thing anymore. But Brockhampton was one of the last really like crew-centric collectives that kind of like was big. Like that's kind of run its course. We don't really see that very often anymore.
Nice.
But it's kind of like a modern day version of what kind of Save Money and a lot of those kind of cliques were, Pivot Gang, maybe Chicago
Phony
as
people.
well. Yeah, Beast Coast. New York ones as well. I can't think of the name right now. Flatbush Zombies. But it's just crews. They're like the crews. They're self-sufficient. They can do all those things.
Joey
ASAP Mob.
Joy
Badass had a crew,
Badass.
yeah.
There we go. Yeah. Pro Era.
Pro Era, yeah. They had a crew.
ASAP Gang.
ASAP, yep. But even like the Underachievers and Flatbush Zombies and however they do theirs, I mean, I'm not sure what their group dynamics are because I'm not overly familiar with each individual member, but it's, you know, it's taken the big money label approach and saying, we don't need that.
Yeah.
Let's do it independent.
I'm not mad. I'm definitely not mad at that message. Like that's.
I mean, because it's really all about like having the thing. Like you just need somebody to do the thing, right? Like you either need the money to do it, or you need to have the physical labor to do it. And there's something to be said about just doing it yourself. Like if you know how to throw shows, you know how to throw tours, you know how to shoot videos, you know how to do social media, you know how to get your music on platforms, you know how to mix, you know how to master, you know how to write songs, you know how to collaborate. You know how to market a little bit? Sure. Marketing budgets are important, but like you can do a lot of it you know, even back then was a little bit pre-TikTok, but nowadays, you know, you just TikTok it up, man. TikTok, create Instagram Reels, do that type of thing. Sure, if you put more money behind it, it's going to get more, but it's the same type of process, rinse and repeat.
You know, that's where it is. Like you see so many.
But money does help. Money does help. Like that loan from that record label does help, you know, and if the label has any type of notoriety, it does help. Any type of connections that they have, but you can have these connections yourself as well, you know, without necessarily signing a deal.
People that are successful. Look at Freddie Gibbs. Like he's doing well, independent, been independent for a while. I think Bandana was some type of deal with Empire. Was it? I'm trying to remember what label it was.
No matter.
They actually did something with them.
A distribution.
Yeah.
Probably through Empire.
But other than that, like he, you know,
Chance was saying don't even get distribution deals.
Yeah, but to Lone's point, you know,
But in 2019, what is a distribution deal?
That's
right.
True.
That's
true.
That's a good
You used
question.
to have a major, make sure all your CDs were in Target, then make sure you get enough cleans into Walmart, Sam Goody. You had to have relationships with all of these brick and mortar stores, which by and large don't exist anymore. You know, I remember back in the day when Jay-Z's The Dynasty album came out, and he flew up to Minnesota to sit down with the people from Target, you know, to make sure he got the proper placement of his album in the store. You know, that was something that the record company, you know, probably paid for, you know, and that was about relationships. That's something that's not needed anymore. A lot of these groups actually need to go back and look at their contracts because, you know, they're still getting charged for, you know, their pressing and distribution, and their albums are just being uploaded to the internet and to these streaming sites, and they're still charging them for jewel cases and inserts.
Right.
You know, I've seen stories where the artists, you know, they had to go back and say, hey, why are you still charging me this much per unit sold for something that doesn't even exist anymore? So I feel them on that because at this point, your distribution is your ability to know how to use the internet.
Yeah, and you can go and you can sign a distribution deal with distribution companies that can push it everywhere. It's pretty simple anymore. But I will say a manager does help. Like somebody that does focus on these type of things. Like I would say before a label, you definitely need a good manager. You know, you need somebody that can manage and knows how to do all these things. That's really all that you really need. Somebody that can help you generate and create relationships and build and grow those relationships and things of that nature. Those things are important. I would be super wary of signing any type of label deal.
Your advantage. But as far as management is concerned,
and I would say like even further, nowadays it's not even necessary anymore. Like it's really not from an indie perspective. You don't really need it's just like a major indie label that can really put some money behind you and really put a lot of like some budget and some you're really going to get a lot from it. But yeah, I don't really think unless they can give you a little bit of money up front, if it's a small deal, like you don't really need it. I would say the most important piece of all this, whether you're going to do it or not, is just make sure you read your contract, make sure you understand what's in your contract, or make sure you have somebody that can read it for you. Those are the important pieces. But you know, with social media, teams are important. And if a label has a really good team around you and can help, and it's not a predatory deal, then I think maybe it could be okay. You know, but that's always the case.
Okay, you know, Chance is he's a good kid, articulate and smart.
But at the same time, if it's not giving you a ton of value, you are giving your ownership of your master recording to somebody else for an explicit period of time, most likely. So just keep that in mind.
But, you know, there are some people that I would not want them to speak for themselves when it comes to cutting certain deals, because you got to know how to go in and talk to people. There's, and this is also another thing. Chance, when he goes to these radio stations, he's actually able to do these interviews and not come off as a complete idiot. There's a lot of what you're seeing a lot of, especially when you watch The Breakfast Club, or you might watch, Big Boy's Neighborhood or Hot 97, is the whole actual A&Ring and making sure people have a certain level of media training. That's completely out the door. So in 2019, he does make a good point about, why should I sign up to have someone help me do all these things that I essentially can do myself, because I know how to use the internet. All they're doing is hitting upload anyway.
He didn't sound very bright, though, when he said that he was top 5 and that he wasn't number 5.
Now that right there, that's something totally different.
We can get into that in a minute.
We can go down that road later.
But it really does come down to the fact that,
I feel like just make sure you evaluate. I think it's important to read the contracts, obviously. But in general, I think I feel kind of the same way. I actually probably feel more so on the side of, you don't need big interests. You don't need a bunch of people's hand in your pot. You know what I mean? Like, I work with some artists from time to time on the label that I run, but it's a very boutique label. I don't take a lot of percentage off top. I don't have any exclusive rights with the master recordings. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just here to kind of help artists that kind of struggle a little bit with a lot of the clerical side and getting everything going, and giving a little bit of guidance here and there. And I feel like if you're running into a situation like that, to where like you can kind of do something together, that might make sense. But when it comes to a lot of these bigger deals and these bigger companies and stuff like that, there's just a lot of people that are trying to get their hands in your pockets, and I feel like the awareness around this is a lot better than what it used to be. All right, this has been my Unpack series. This is, so that's from episode 148 of the New Old Heads podcast. So if you want to go check out that whole segment, go and do that. Right around the episode 148 was where we're doing like our goat talk. So it was like for like an entire 10 episodes or something. But this has been Unpacked with Longevity. Until next time, peace.